So this was a little bit of short notice for me. And Thursday, I just got the call to switch, and I thought, gosh, what am I going to talk about on short notice? And I know I'm not teaching for another 3 weeks, so I done very little research for that, and I didn't want to throw that together really quick. So Walt actually made a suggestion that I teach something that I haven't taught in a long time, except for, I'm sorry, Emily, you and Alex are probably like, and Chris back there like, oh my gosh, we've heard this a million times. So I might actually use you guys as props. You guys are going to come up, at least Chris. Chris knows he's coming up. I didn't give you any short notice. That's all right.
I didn't agree to come up.
I don't care if you agree or not. You're just coming up.
You're being called.
That's right. That's right.
Let's go.
You know, it's funny. I'll just say this. You know, Roman tapped me when you were up there talking. He's like, hey, is Aaron talking tonight? I said, no. He's like, oh, shoot. I didn't make that up. He actually did say it, but he didn't say the oh, shoot. But I could hear the come out of his mouth. Oh, it all depends on the connotation behind that, right? He was really hoping you were going to teach us what he was saying.
This is one of my favorite sermons.
Oh, thanks for the pressure. So a few years ago, probably, gosh, I don't know how long it's been now, 10 years ago, I had some college students come up to me, and we were here and we were teaching, and they would come over to my house, and we had these conversations about the New Testament and the Old Testament, and they were confused, like why we were conflating the two, why we were talking about these two things. And for several of them, they had this mindset, this belief that they had been taught that Jesus, especially in the Matthew Gospels, like the first, the Sermon on the Mount, especially, like that was his teaching of refuting the Torah and saying the Torah is over, and I'm now going to give you a new teaching, and my teaching is the way. This is the new covenant. This is the New Testament teachings. All that old stuff you can do away with because that was a different God. Now we live under the New Testament, so you can do away with this. And one of their passages that they referenced a lot was Matthew 5:38. And so if you have your Bibles, I want you to turn to Matthew 5:38 because this is where we're going to spend the bulk of our evening. And so, in this passage, I gotta move around Kenny here. Oops, turn it on.
You need me to move?
No, you're good. I'll just move around you.
No, man. You can't make the pass.
No, I'm good. That was a nice dig right there. That was good, Kenny. So, in Matthew 5:38, what does it say? Somebody read it to me. Somebody read it out loud. Anyone?
You have heard that it was said, eye for an eye. You said 38, right?
38 and 39, yes.
You have heard that it was said, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also.
Right. Great. Right there. Yeah, right there. That's good. That's perfect. So in this passage it says, you've heard that it was said. Where might they have heard this before? Okay, yeah, in the Torah, in the Old Testament, right? They heard it somewhere in the Old Testament. It was the old stuff. But what does Jesus say? But I tell you, right? So this is their argument that Jesus was doing away with the Old Testament. What you heard before was old, but I say to you, right? This is what you do now, right? Which changes the whole emphasis of this passage, and it changes the way that you think about this passage, because a lot of times we see this passage and it says, but I tell you, don't do this and don't do this. And we have this kind of this pacifist Jesus that we look at and that we follow. Like, he's all about peace. If you get hit on the right cheek, what are you supposed to do? Let somebody hit you again and just keep taking the beatings, because that's what we're supposed to do, right? And so this was for a struggle for me years ago, but as I was looking at this and talking with them through this, we said, let's go and do something that we typically do, right? Because most people have been taught to do what's called eisegesis. Can you say that? Eisegesis, right? That's the process of, this is what I think this means, right? I'm going to read my English translation, I'm going to read my English text, and this is what I think the text actually means, right? Which is dangerous. Why? Why is that dangerous?
Because it's been translated.
Before we get there, that's good, Kenny. But before we get there, why else is it dangerous?
Depending on your own understanding.
Depend on your own understanding. And what if your understanding is different than Andrea's understanding? Who's right? What if your understanding is different than Lindley's understanding? And you all have your own understanding. Well, that's your understanding. So I believe it to be this, right? And you can have confusion and you have these struggles, right? And so, and different opinions, right? Not to mention what you said earlier, you're just reading a commentary anyways, because this has been translated from one language into another language based on the doctrine that you grew up in, right? Because if you add in a comma to a sentence or take away a comma from a sentence, can it change the meaning of a sentence? Yeah, definitely, right? Let's eat, Grandma. Or let's eat, Grandma. Right? Changes everything, right? And so these things are important to us, and so is the gathering. We talk about 4 things that are really important. What are those 4 things, Bobby?
Oh, culture, context, history, language.
Chill, as you described it, right? We have to chill at the gathering. Context, culture, history, language. That's a process of exegesis. We try to dig deep to understand what the original people who were reading this document or listening to this story, what they heard. Because how they heard it and how they understood it, how they applied it, should affect us. As opposed to 2,000 years later, we reading an ancient text and saying, this is what I think my 21st century American Democratic Republic mindset thinks about free capitalism in the Bible. Right? We insert that, and then we try to explain it. As opposed to, let's dig in and first see what this text would have been understood as. So when we look at Matthew 5:39, the emphasis, but I say to you, right? This is the idea that Jesus is saying, do away with the old because, but I say this. The Greek in this is ego de logo, right? Ego is I, it's me, it's this idea of itself. De is what is it? It is a participle. It's a conjunctive primary participle, right? It's a form of continuative action, right? And so it connects it to the idea of lego, say, words, right? In other words, if you translate it directly, it would say, I but say. That doesn't make any sense, right? So we have to translate it, in a way that we can understand this. I but say doesn't make any sense. And depending on your theological background, if you want to put the emphasis on the but, and separating the ideas that Jesus is actually teaching something different, you would put the de in front of the ego, but that's not the emphasis. In Greek and in Hebrew, the emphasis always comes at the beginning of a sentence. The emphasis here is Yeshua, what he's saying, I, right? I but say, or this word de can also be translated as also. It can also be translated as now. It can also be translated as then. So if I were to change that to one of the other ways you could translate this, it could say, I now say, or I also say, I then say. Does that change the way that you hear what he's about to say? No longer is it, but I tell you, it's, I also tell you, right? Now, as we've learned from the culture and the context and the history that we've taught before, this isn't something that's new. This is something that all of the rabbis did in the first century. All of the rabbis would pick out a text and then they would say, ego de logo, right? I also tell you. We are the same thing. We do the same thing here. We talk about a text that you have memorized, right? Because you have most of the scriptures memorized, right, Dylan? Right? Most of it, at least, right? We pick a text that you have memorized. That'll be next year, right? We pick a text that we want to teach from, and then what do we do with that text? We explain it. We explain the context that we explain. This is what this text means. And if you're a really good rabbi, right, you might not just teach what it means, you might teach, here's another way to see this. Here's another way to apply this to your life, right? It's not just the literal. Maybe there's a different way. If you're really good, you can explore the text and make it explode for people in a way that they've never seen it before. And it changes the way that you view the text. And so, as we look at this passage, I didn't reset the way I found it, right? This passage comes from 3 different texts. Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy. It says, for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, and a foot for a foot. If you look up this passage, right, which if it's quoted 3 times, usually we've said that that's what? It's kind of important, right? If it's said over and over and over, right? It's an important passage in the Torah. If we look at these passages in context, and I would encourage you to write those down, go back and look at these passages. I want you to see them, not just take my word for it, but go and research these passages yourself. But the context of these passages are all the same. They're about justice. They're about what you do when you've been wronged. We actually use the scenario when Shauna's bull got out last week, right? And it gored, Kim's goat. Like, what do we do? That's where this passage is talking about. It's talking about that same thing. What do you do when someone has wronged you or you've been wronged by somebody? It's about this idea of basic fairness, as an adult, in business, in family, in schools, right? It's the idea of how do you curb violence in a society? How do you have peace within a society? What happens... Let's ask this question. Today's culture is interesting. What happens when you live in a society where you don't have justice?
No justice, no peace.
No justice, no peace. Yeah. Right?
I watch CNN too.
When you have no justice, right, there is no peace. That is a true statement. Right? And how you interpret it, it depends, right? But this idea, there's times where you feel like, where is the justice? And sometimes maybe some of you have witnessed it on TV, right? You see these things, events on TV, like, where's the justice? Or maybe you've experienced in your own life an opportunity or experience where you felt like there was no justice, there was no fairness, like something happened to me, but where's the consequences to the person who did the wrong? This just is not right. Welcome to first century Jerusalem, right? This is exactly where the context begins. First century Jerusalem was ruled by Rome, the empire. The empire dictated how you lived your life. The empire told you what you could and could not do. It limited your amount of freedom. If you wanted religious freedom, you had to appeal to Caesar. You had to send people to Rome to try to get these ways that you could make sure that you could celebrate these festivals. Because otherwise they could tell you, no, we're not going to allow you to do this. Right? This empire, this Roman Empire, also installed this form of hierarchical government that controlled the temple and controlled the politics of the day, right? And these people weren't installed because they were the people's favorite. It wasn't because the people liked these people or appreciated or respected these people. The people who got put into power were put there because they bought their way into power. They paid for it. These were the Sadducees. The Sadducees were corrupt. They were dishonest. They were politically ruthless. And several of these Sadducees fought for the high priesthood, and whoever could outpay the other person to get that spot, right? It was like watching politics today. It was very, very ruthless. As the years continued to pass on, as the years continued to go one right after the other, you had these tensions that continued to build up. People would see the Roman government. They would be frustrated by the lack of freedom they had. They would be frustrated by seeing the politicians and how the politicians did everything for themselves, promising things for the people, but only helped themselves. And the people were always left in squander. And the tension continued to rise. And there are some in this group who say, we want our freedom back. We want our country back. Some that were even willing to rise up and to kill if need be, and murder if necessary. They know these texts as well. They know the text that says life for life, eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. If these people took one of our family's lives, then we have the right by God to take their life. These people were called zealots. They were passionate, zealous for the word, even to the point of death. There was another group of leaders in this time, those who didn't want violence. They didn't want to pursue that path. Those who believed that, look, if we pursue that path, Rome is too big. There's nothing that we can do. It's too big to fight. The Sadducees are too wealthy. They'll always have the power. We must just wait for God to do something. Maybe at some point Messiah will come and he will rescue us. He will save us from these Romans and from these Sadducees. And it was this mindset that kind of was spread out through the majority of the people. But because of that mindset, there was almost a sense of giving up. Like, will Messiah come? And I mean, what do we do? When discussing these passages with the groups of people, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and the zealots might have been in the same room, the rabbis would remind them of Deuteronomy 32 that says, "Vengeance is mine, says the Lord." It's not for you to take vengeance. You wait for the Lord. And so you have this binary tension around this toxic anxiety that is building in the city and building and building. And you have this mentality that there's only two choices. I either wait for the Messiah to show up, or I join the zealots and I fight with them. And I do something that I don't want to do. You have this idea that it's either it's right or it's wrong. It's either or. There's only these two choices. It's black or it's white, because it is what it is. That's all that we have. It is what it is. You could feel the tension. You could feel the anxiety everywhere you went, into every store, every shop, every building, every family, every house. There was tension and anxiety. Then along comes this rabbi who decides, you know what? Let's talk about this passage. Let's talk about this very explosive passage that people don't really want to talk about, because when you do, you got to pick a side. So people don't want to talk about it. But all of a sudden, one of his very first messages, this rabbi comes strolling along, and he wants to talk about this passage. You've heard that it was said, life for life, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Here's my commentary on it. Read it again for me, Bruce. 38 and 39.
You have heard that it was said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also.
Keep going.
And if someone wants to sue you...
Oh, wait, no, hold it right there. Yeah, that's stay right there. Good. So Chris said he would volunteer to come up. Chris, come on up here. Thank you very much. Come on up. Yes. Uh-huh. Roman, come on up here too. Ah, man. Like, yes, and Chris. Oh. Right here. That's right. Right here. Face each other. Face each other. So what does the text say again? Here, stand right here so everybody can see you. Oh, wow. Right up here. Face each other.
Biggest slaps.
Right. So what does it say again? I'm going to have you read it a couple times.
You've heard that it was said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth.
Good. Eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, and then?
But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also.
Great. And so if Roman were going to punch Chris, right, how would he punch Chris? How would you punch Chris?
My knees.
Well, if you're going to punch him in the face, let's say.
My knees.
Okay, so you're going to punch him with your right hand, and where you're going to hit him where?
Right here.
What side of his face?
On his right side.
His right side. But what did the text say?
Oh, his left side. His left side.
How are you going to hit his left side with your right hand? How are you going to whip it around and go this
Yeah,
way?
that's his right side. Wait.
What does the text
Roman had
say?
it backwards.
If someone strikes you on the right cheek,
Right. So that's my point. So Roman, I was right. Roman's going to use his right hand to punch him. But how is he going to punch him on his left cheek? That doesn't make any sense.
right cheek.
On his right cheek.
You go from behind and back hand.
Ah, okay. So let's talk about this. Roman's the Roman. Roman is the Roman, right? He's the Roman soldier right here. All right? So Roman's a Roman soldier, and Chris is just this dirty Jew, right? He's just this peasant Jew, right? And so, and he's got a beard too. There you go. Right? And so for a Roman would look down on a Jew as what? Lesser, right? He's nothing to him. Like, that's why I say he's a dirty Jew. He's scum, right? Because the Roman is... We're setting up context here, Chris. Right? The Romans, they controlled what in the world? Everything, right? They were in control of the entire world, right? They dominated everything, militarily, politically, money, monetary, everything. They were the power. So the mindset of a Roman soldier is, I got the power. You know, if I tell you to do something, you do what I tell you. Now, there was things that happened in this world as well, right? if somebody had power over another person, there was a respect level. How much respect do you think this Jew had from a Roman soldier? Nada. And so there were certain things that we have to understand this text. As a Roman soldier is trained and paid to do what? Kill, fight. He's a professional killer, right? And so he will attack somebody who is his opponent or somebody, his adversary, with respect. Does he respect this Jew? No, of course not. He's below him. So you would never fight somebody who you disrespect the same way that you would fight somebody that you respect, right? If Roman were to attack a Jew, right, he would use his right fist or his sword, and he would thrust it through him, or he would punch him, or he would knife him some other way, right? That's the form of respect. But because he doesn't respect him, because he doesn't respect a Jewish person, he would never hit him the same way. So if Roman were to hit this Jewish person, how would he hit him? To show disrespect. What, Wes? Right? He would hit him with his backhand. And what side of his face would he hit him?
Oh, and his
Ooh, on his right cheek, right? So all of a sudden, boom, he hits him here on his right cheek. He is hit, oh my gosh, right? And some people say, well, why wouldn't he just hit him with his left hand, right? Because that's probably what the Bible's talking about. He would hit him with his left hand, and then you would turn your other cheek. But you would never, as a Roman soldier, ever hit somebody with your left hand. Why? It's dirty. Why is it dirty? What? They wipe with it, right? That's the hand that you don't use your left hand to do anything with, right? There's rules to this game too. Like, there's disrespect, but you would never hit somebody with this either. That's disgusting, right? So your right hand is a form of power. Your right hand is a form of authority. Your right hand is just demonstrating, this is who I am. So I might not attack you the same way, but I'm still going to hit you with my power. I'm just going to hit you in a way of disrespect. I'm going to slap you, right across the backside of the face. But what does the text say, Bruce? Once the Jew gets hit, what is this Jew supposed to do? What does he say? Turn the other cheek.
Someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also.
Now remember, there's this binary culture that we live in. If you get hit on one cheek, one group says what? Hit him back. Right? The other culture says what? Yeah, just take it. Just take the beating and just go, I'm sorry, sir, go away. What does Yeshua say? Turn the other cheek, right? No, turn the other cheek.
I know.
There you go.
We're doing
right? Turn the other cheek. So now, he's still not going to hit him with his left cheek, but what has Chris just done?
He's making
He's
him have
cheek.
to hit him with his right hand.
He's saying, look, if you're going to hit me like a man. Hit me again. But don't hit me like a derogatory term. Punch me, right? So all of a sudden, this is like, wait a second. He just gave another way to address this. This doesn't make any sense. Go ahead, sit down, Roman. You stay here. Bruce, keep reading. The next passage. What does it say after that?
What, 40?
No, just the next thing to do. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. So if somebody hits you,
Turn to him
turn your
the
cheek.
other also.
And then what does the next one say?
And if someone wants to sue you, you want me to go to 40?
Just whatever that talks about.
And if someone wants to sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well.
Great. Grab me that blue blanket back there really quick. Run it up here. Yeah, run it up here. All right.
Where's my camera?
So I don't have the actual garb here, so this is a little bit different, nomadic here. So in first century culture, you would wear two garments. You would have two garments that you would wear. We wear like 4 garments, right? We have all kinds of pieces of clothing that to wear. In first century Jerusalem, you would have 2 garments. You would have an outer garment, and you would have an inner garment. Your inner garment is what had your seat and all this other stuff, and it was usually down to your legs, or waist height, and it would drag. And then you would have this that would cover that. This cloak part that would cover that. And so the passage is talking about this idea that there were some people, maybe potentially the Sadducees, who were so greedy, who were so ruthless, who if you didn't pay them just the least amount of penny that you owed them, they would take you to court and they would sue you, right? Just to mock you because they had the power. And they were going to get every last bit of blood out of you because you owe them. I don't care if it ruins your life. I'm going to get all the money that you owe me. You know, I don't care if you have a family of 4 at home. I don't care if your crop hasn't come in yet. I'm going to bury you because you owe me money and I want it now. So if you don't have anything, fine. I'm going to take your cloak, right? I'm going to show you that I have the power. I'm going to take your cloak, right? Now, what does Chris have left on? Right? What's underneath the tunic?
Naked.
Nothing, right? And so what does Yeshua say? What does he say? Right? Give him that too. Right here. You want to take my cloak? Here, take this too. It's all yours. Now, what's different in our culture from their culture, if you see something that's naked, or if you are naked, who's the person that's shamed? Right? The person who's naked. Right? If I'm naked and you see me naked, what do? You know, I clothe up really quick because I don't want to see you. I don't want you to see me naked. In Middle Eastern culture, the shame wasn't on the person who was naked. The shame was on the person who saw the nakedness. Think about Noah, right? What did Noah's children do when they saw him naked? Right? They walked in what? Backwards, right? Because they didn't want to be shamed by seeing the nakedness, right? So what is Yeshua saying? Fine, you want my tunic? Here's my undergarment as well.
Shame.
Who's now being shamed? The person who's doing the suing, right? I was going to shame you like you owe me a penny. And you can't take, I'm going to take your penny. I'm going to take your cloak too. I'm going to shame you, make everybody see how poor you are and how bad you are. I'm going to humiliate you to the point where you're not even human anymore. And all of a sudden, one comment says, fine, you want my cloak? Here's my tunic too. Now all of a sudden, what does the guy suing do? What do I do now? Next passage.
If someone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles.
No way, you actually wait.
It's only 50 pounds. I'll give you a sword, though.
It's not heavy, but geez.
I'll give you the sword, too. What does it say? Say it again.
It says, if someone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles.
All right, so this is a passage from Roman times, right? When Rome controlled all swaths of the world, right? Roman soldiers had to carry packs, like our military today, heavy packs, right? With their military equipment, their sleeping gear, their other gear that they had to wear, like it was heavy, right? At some point, if you're a Roman soldier, you know, you want to like put this pack down because you're heavy. Well, they applied to the Senate and all these other things. What are the rules? Can I have one of these slave people that we oversee? Can they carry our pack? And the edict came back from Rome and says, absolutely. We care about our soldiers. If we want to take one of these places that we have overrun and ruled and now take it, you know, they're working for us, so they're our slaves. You now have the authority to go up to one of these slaves and say, hey, carry my pack for 1 mile. Come up. Yeah, you. Mm-hmm. Come on. So now you're a Roman soldier. Great. What do you get to do?
I get to make him carry my stuff.
That's right. Absolutely. Here comes a Jew walking by you, and you're like, I'm tired. Take my pack. Right? But don't give him your sword, remember? Because you don't know if he's a zealot or a Pharisee, right?
Sure.
So go ahead. Start walking around. Go ahead. Walk that way. Walk around the room. Make sure he doesn't run off with your pack, though. Right? So this was common law, right? You would carry this pack, and you would go on and on and on until the point where you finally got arrested, you got your pack taken away, but it's a mile, right? It's a long ways. So sometimes these Roman soldiers have to walk for miles on end to get from one place to the other. But if you walk more than a mile, if you are caught by somebody that is a senior sergeant or major or whoever is in the authority, right? If they look at you and they recognize, like, wait, Chris has been going over a mile, now he can get punished, right? And so now, wait, you've gone your mile, right? What does the text say?
Go with him 2.
Go with them too. Oh, keep walking. Now all of a sudden, the soldier that's following Chris, that was kind of prodding him before with his sword, kind of making fun of him, is now saying what?
Wait.
Whoa. Because the law stated that you could, if you were violating this law and you were actually going beyond this law, you could actually have severe consequences. Flogging, you could even maybe be put to death. You could be burned to death because you exceeded your authority. So now all of a sudden, this Jew is walking more than a mile, and the person who had the power and had the authority is now saying, what'd you say? Bruce?
Wait.
Forgot what he said. Whoa. Right? You're saying stop. Stop. Please stop. No, you got to stop. You don't understand. Please stop. Right? The guy who had all the power said, giddy up, go, get on. Right? Take my pack. Is now the one saying, wait. Please stop. Please. Don't keep going. Please stop. Right? What has just happened? You can take your pack off. What?
Psychology.
You've just reversed the whole thing. Not reverse psychology, but the situation. One person who had the power now all of a sudden seems to have no power. Right? And here is this understanding that... You can go sit down. Thank you. You guys, give these guys a great hand. Yeah, well done. This whole idea was to expose, like, wait a second. It's not about the binary things. It's about the fact that every one of us in this room is human. And I don't care if the Roman soldiers look down on us or the Sadducees look down on us and the people who have money and power who look down on us. They need to know that we are human too. Just like them. They are no different than us. We don't have to fight them. We don't have to kill them to show them this. We can show them that there is justice that needs to be had, that there is fairness, that there is rights that need to be seen, but we don't have to do it in a violent way, and we don't have to be pacifistic and say, oh, we can't do anything, let's just go along to get along. No, we can confront this, but in a way that challenges the status quo, that challenges the way that is typically binary. It's either this or it's this. It just is what it is. No, it's not it is what it is unless we do something different about it. Is it possible to expose the injustice without violence? He just gave it to us. He just showed us that it's possible to find a different way to achieve justice, to achieve fairness, to achieve peace. We are all human. Yeshua's point was to combat this injustice by changing the rules to prove we should respect each other. And then he goes on to a very interesting sentence. What does the next passage say? 42.
Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you.
This is classic Yeshua. Don't just complain. Don't just, get mad at these people. Don't just say these things. If you want change, I've given you a way to change. But now you have to do the same thing. If you want fairness, if you want to be treated like a human, then you treat other people like human. If you see people in need, do something about it. If you see injustice, do something about it. If you see that there's fairness that's not taking place, do something about it. Don't just be the complainer. Don't just be the person who says, look at all the wrong. No, be the person who is different. Be the person that you want others to be. Be that person yourself. He doesn't just address the one issue. He makes sure that you have the responsibility on both ends. You have the responsibility. For years, as a staff, we've looked at this passage as a way to guide us, as a way to look beyond the binary decisions that too often our society presents us. Too often, whether it be religion or politics or government, it's also politics, but maybe business that's happening around us within our communities, we've been able to sift through these ideas like, well, we have to do this, or we have to do this, and we've learned to ask, like, what is the third option? Is there a third way to address this? Is there a way to be creative? Is there a way to look beyond just what we see on the surface? Because that's where we get caught. Is there a way to ask deeper questions? Is there a way to see the issue and the problem that we're dealing with today a different way, from a different perspective? And we've called this the third way for over a decade now, but it has forced us on a regular, monthly, sometimes weekly basis to look at every situation that we go through through more than one lens, through a deeper perspective. And I think it has changed us as a community because we've done so. Questions on the third way? Yes, sir. Kenny.
How did you come to this whole conclusion?
Which one?
Oh, yeah, just on the different breakdowns of, all right, this is actually what he was talking about in that culture. I mean, clearly, I would probably say he was just studying Jewish culture, but
Yeah, go ahead.
The other passage was the guy asked Jesus about the blind man. Who caused this man's blindness, him or his parents? And what's the answer?
God.
It's not A or B, it's C, right? He explained something different. And that was the one that was also tied to this because
Right.
you see that it's, just like Jesus said in this passage, it's not what you think it is. It's not on the surface A or B, black or white. You know, it's got to be this or this. There was that other possibility that you hadn't thought of.
So a lot of this was from history.
Actually, I've
Right.
heard this teaching before.
Historically, you have to understand like Roman law, right? Because that's why we talk about chill, like context, culture, history, language. If you don't know all the things that are in play here, you're like you easily read it and misinterpret it. And so when we talk about history and we talk about historical things and archaeology and the culture in which they lived in, right? If you don't understand those things or know that those things happen,
You just reading the
you would just read right over it, right? You were gonna say something?
I wanted to ask, have you ever like contemplated some practical, contemporary ways to execute that mentality? Like, it's one thing to do that on purpose. Then, now that you know the context and the culture and all that stuff, but how would we do those same things today? Obviously, getting naked in front of somebody is not going to work. So
No.
what should we do? Have you ever just like contemplated like what do?
Well, like I said, we've had to deal with it often,
Sure.
right? Very rarely do we have multiple options. Too often people come to us with a problem and they say, we can only either do this or we can either do that, right? We live in that culture today, right? And we as a staff have constantly gone back and forth and said, okay, what is another way? Right? Let's maybe sometimes we've looked at the problem differently. We look at it from every angle to come up with a different way to apply it. So, I mean, I can't give you one way because we've done it thousands of times.
Sure.
Right? Like I said, it's been a part of who we are. It's been a part of our culture, our ethos. Like this is just what we do, right? We have companies and organizations that have come with us and sat down with me and Aaron in that room back there, and they said, we're trying to figure out what to do with this 501c3, and we don't know what to do. And we're told this and we're told that. And one conversation helped, I won't say the name, but one organization like, oh my God, we never thought about that. And it just changed their paradigm to move them in a direction that was positive. So, I mean, it's for everything.
Yeah, and I'm totally, that makes sense, but I mean more along the lines of like someone who executes their authority over you because of their status. How can you actually take away their power? Like, what are some practical ways to just be able to, like, you're acting injustice?
Sure.
So, comes to mind, I used to work as a contractor going in and out of the different refineries.
Sure.
My father did too. And, occasionally you run into a problem where somebody's like, oh, well, I work for the refinery and you work for me and I'm gonna tell you what to do and they're just gonna treat you like lesser than.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought of it, it kind of fits perfectly. It makes it like exactly to what he's saying. So, my dad one day, for the longest time, he was going into a refinery and the guy that worked there was a stickler for the rules. He was always, just like badgering my dad and just making him feel that lesser part of. And my dad just went along with it. He's telling me, I mean, as long as the guy wasn't telling him not to break the rules or something, if he was telling him a correct method or what to do, my dad went along and he did it. Well, sure enough, eventually the time came when, my dad was normally out in the rain. It didn't matter when these jobs came about. He's got the best rain suit. He's got, he's ready for the occasion. And the guy all of a sudden that was supposed to go with him to watch him do what he was supposed to do said, you know what, go ahead and go on your own. My dad, polite as possible, turned around and told him, said, no, the rule says you need to be there with me and watch me. You know, you were supposed to be making sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So he insisted that that guy that was always being the bully go with him. Now, his rain suit wasn't near as good. He's getting soaking wet. My dad's dry as he could possibly be in the situation, taking his time, doing everything to the T. Didn't waver at all. And he pretty much made the guy stand there and watch him do what he had to do the whole time. Well, that's a perfect situation, because guess who didn't bother my dad ever again? Blue skies or anything. You know, it kind of like it flipped the situation on the guy to where he realized, you know, that maybe I don't need to be like that. So.
I think that's the key. It's situational, right? Yeshua gave 3 situations, 3 different types of current day, real situations, right? That's a real day situation. So you might encounter a situation that might not be the exact same as what they're going through,
Right.
but they're clearly
I just wanted to
situations.
hear if you had any more, just like thoughts, like I was thinking about this or this happened, and this is
Off the top of my head, no. Go ahead.
So like, I've heard this 10 times or something like that, but like I always seem to
More than that.
Get somebody up there. I seem to put myself in the position of the Jew, but in reality, like being a white male in the United States, I'm probably more likely to be the Roman in this situation. So like this was the first time I had to think about like what would I do, like because more likely we have the power to do something. So like with all this stuff going on in the world, like
Yeah.
where is it my responsibility sitting in where I am?
Sure.
I'm not always the victim. I like looking out for your brother or something like that. Like this was the first time I actually thought about it from the other side.
Right.
I was actually just gonna add, which it kind of ties into that, though. I think a more modern example would have been Martin Luther King Jr. in his aspect when he fought the civil rights movement. That was one of his biggest points was, well, hey, we can't get violent.
Right.
In fact, that's actually what they want.
Right.
We can't give them what they want, because if we give them what they want, then they can just wipe us out anyway.
Right.
So we can't play by the game that they're trying to play. We gotta flip the script.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
The other one, remember that guy that came in with his fiance, I guess, their trailer had burned. They came and asked us for money for a hotel. And I think that I felt a lot of pressure, because if we as a church said no, you just look bad. I was scared they were going to put something online if we said no. I was frustrated because I thought we were in a pickle that money for a hotel was going to run out real quick. You know, we couldn't pay for that many nights in a hotel. And so we didn't want to say yes, but we didn't want to say no. And I was kind of squirming in the situation. I think we discussed it as a staff. The guy made one comment about, we asked him if he had a job, and he made a comment about how he had a kind of a lower paying job, but he was trying to get into a refinery. And he said, but I don't have a TWIC card. And we knew it was about $100, $150 to go take the test to get his TWIC card. And so we said, bingo, that's what we're going to adopt right there. So we paid for him to do it, which is the classic, I felt like, version of that phrase, hand up versus hand out. We helped him get a certification, take one farther step in life and get forward, but it wasn't the original option A or B that we went for. You know, it's like slow down, ask some questions, have a little patience, and don't live in fear of what could happen, you know, what bad press, I guess, for our church could happen, but instead think creatively and try to go for that third option, or find it.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the points he was trying to make. I don't take it as Yeshua was talking about specific instances about that. He was talking about the generic way, and I think that's what we can take from it today, especially when we're dealing with each other. Who is it? Richard Rohr says, you know, when you're facing a problem, you got to be able to look past what you think you can see and what you think you hear, because that's where your answer is. And it's just our communications with each other and everything else.
Right.
We just got to find a way to find that different area, because we've already made up our minds. And they've already made up their minds. There's got to be another solution. That's that third way.
Yeah. Yeah. Bruce, you want to pray us out?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Those.
Yeah, Shiva.
That's a big Brandy thing. Yeshua? Father God, we thank you for the gift of life, the very breath that you give us, and all that entails. Joys and celebration, and struggles, and strength, and growth. Father, we thank you for your Son and his teaching, and what we draw from that. And Father, show us, we just pray that you would open our minds daily and just give us an awareness for third ways and just a patience for that, to wait on you, and the clarity to hear that third word from you. Lord, just in our going, help us to be the light that this world so desperately needs, and to each other, for strength, and for uplifting. And Lord, we just give you thanks for this community, and give you thanks for these times of teaching and learning, and Lord, just be with us as we digest and hopefully grow through it. And Father, we just lift all these things up in your Son's name.